Hello. Today we're going to take a break from the past 14 video streak of nothing but interviews and go back to discussing a few things about the fandom. Today we're going to be talking about an odd phenomenon that seems unique to the Worm fandom, which is, people participating in fan fiction and discussion and other things when they haven't read the source material itself. Which, you never really find anyone who's writing Harry Potter fan fiction who's not read Harry Potter. It doesn't really happen, but for some reason it happens more than I'd like. And so today we're going to sort of explore why that happens. So, first of all, we need to sort of explain why the Worm fandom is unique in a lot of ways, and you know, it's also quite odd that people these people don't read it because it's free as of this point in time. You can easily find it on the internet. I'm going to link to it in the description. I'm going to put a link there because it's that easy. It's not like you have to go borrow a book from the library. You don't have to watch a movie. You can just find it online and it's just there, completely legal, easy, free. So that makes it quite odd, but the barrier of entry for the Worm fandom is the fact that it is 1.6 million, words long. It's a trek. It's like what, twice the length of all the Lord of the Rings books put together. Something ridiculous, And because of that, the demographics that emerge that read that are interested in Worm are different to what you'd normally associate with fan fiction. Most of the fan fiction, lives on stuff like space battles, forums, and then you have a lot of the discussion happening on, once again, space battles, other forums like it, and Reddit. Compared to, most of the time when it would be on like Tumblr, fanfiction.net, and Archive of Our Own, which, admittedly there is a bit, but it's much less than you'd expect for a fanfiction community. Also, there's an odd sort of inverse because often in most fandoms there's also an incredible amount of fan art, and in the Worm fandom there's a pretty large dearth of it. In fact, there's only like 2 or 3 people who've done more than just a single one-off picture, and it's just you should be able to tell by the fact that when I'm interviewing notable people in the community, it's almost guaranteed that it's a fanfiction writer, and I have been meaning to do a few interviews with people who do the fan art instead, but that's in the future. That aside, the fandom is quite different. Like, even anecdotally, I know that the fandom is, demographically has a lot of people, most people are out of their teens, in the 20s, 30s, 40s kind of area. You got writers, aspiring writers, lawyers, physicists, that kind of group. It's not like, that image of a preteen writing slash fiction that you sort of get sometimes with, stereotypical fan film communities, be it correct or incorrect, But that aside, yeah, the fandom has quite an odd demographic, and that's shaped a lot of things about it. It's quite earnest. There's not much in the way of, people. There's discussion, but there's not much people saying rah rah rah, it's bad, rah 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 I can do much better, stuff like that. Or at least it didn't used to. It was just a case of, I like this community. It's small, but I like it, and I want to write more for it because there wasn't enough of the original, even though it was absolutely massive. Me personally, I got into the fandom because it was a case of, wait, that's it. I'm not done with this yet. I want more. I want more. I'll make more if I have to. So, that's normally how a fandom works. But because of this, we've now hit a point where the Worm fandom is large enough to warrant outside attention. Like, hell, it's a good thing. It is a good thing. I want Worm to become more mainstream. I want there to be a day where it gets published or it gets, a TV series, and I can discuss it with the person next to me casually, like, we talk about most people having read Harry Potter or something like that. I want it to get to that point. Realistically, probably it won't, but it would be nice. But we've already hit a pretty decent milestone, which is the fact that we've got enough fan content to start drawing up people from other fandoms, due to crossovers and the fact that some prolific writers from other fandoms have also started writing for us, uh, and that's pretty good. But then you get people who get introduced to Worm from those fan works, who've never read the original, and the problem here is some of them don't go on to read the original. And then you just have people in the fandom who live off the fanon, who don't have a clear understanding of how the story works or how it actually goes, just their perception is through a lens of the fandom, which has its own biases, has its own faults, has its own interpretations, which, you know, over a few cycles leads to this sort of aggregated view where you just get condensed, exaggerated ideals about everything. So then you get the stereotypical stuff happening. You get the really weird stories that are pretty much just an exercise in power wank. You get people who seem to believe that fanon is how it's actually portrayed in the original. You get people who come up with incredibly blasé ideas that add nothing and have nothing of interest. You start getting like self-inserts, which are very badly done. You get, power trips, masquerading as fan fiction, stuff like that. That's coming through, and no, that's fair enough. That's typical of fan fiction. That's typical of the fan community. So you can't avoid that to a certain degree. The problem is then you have people coming in who don't want to read Worm, who believe through their interactions with the community that it's too dark for their own taste. Then you get people, who try to prove that Worm is wrong, that, they could themselves write a better version of Worm. And that level of arrogance is very concerning. Even worse when they haven't read Worm in the first place. And this was supposed to be an episode mainly just discussing the fact that people, for some reason, are in the community without having actually ever read Worm. But I feel like instead of just, discussing it and saying what happens, I want to send a message out to anyone who's interested in the community, who, likes reading stuff from the community, but isn't quite sure about whether or not they should read the original. The answer is read it. Read it. If you like the community, there is a high chance you will like the original, because the community is sort of a celebration of the original. It's like becoming a Christian without having ever read the Bible. It's not something that's advisable because you don't actually understand why things are the way they are. And if you're worried about it being too dark, at least try. Please try, because the fandom came from the work. We are here because we love Worm. If you don't think you love Worm, why are you here? Please at least give an effort to understand why we're all here. That's all I really have to ask of you. Just please try reading it. I understand it is incredibly long. I understand that might put you off, but please, if that is the case, don't write for the fandom. Don't do this kind of thing where you go in blind and there's such an easy way to make yourself see what actually is going on. Please just read Worm, because that's the least you can do to be involved in the fandom. Okay, now that that's over with, I'll see you guys next week